rolling.
Well, here we go. This is show 105.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're starting your third year.
Yes.
Is that scary? That's scary to me.
Welcome, America, to Angel and the Wiz.
Oh yeah, right. We was having a conversation. And on the other side of what you're seeing now, you're seeing the credits. They have a new thing on them. Excuse me.
You.
Yes,
So
now
watch
it's Off to See the Wizard. By what? Did I come with you? I'm
No,
sorry.
because I don't watch our show.
Yeah, see? I got to tell her what's there. So, it's now Off to See the Wizard
Okay.
presents Angel and the Wiz, Positive City. And I just saw Positive City. That's from now until the election. I am going to have a positive thing every single week. I'm going to try and maintain
Okay.
positive presentation. I still want to talk about the issues, but I want to try to find positive ways to talk about
Well,
the issues.
I did have a question. You had sent me an email
Yes, ma'am.
asking me to write a press release, which is as a project over the summer.
Yes, right.
And then you asked me to come prepared with election-style questions.
Yeah, or issues
And-
that we should have an
That-
opinion on.
I have one for you to answer when you're ready.
Okay, oh yeah, and I have to keep my little pen here because what times it say on the little readout down there?
1 minute and 22 seconds.
Okay, well at 1:22 we introduce the new. We can do this every week. We'll put it up on Facebook too. The word of the week.
Oh goodness.
And this week on this show, the word of the week is progress. And you have I want you to feel any week. Now I did the first two because I needed to build them.
Okay.
Okay, as you
Progress.
find words that you want to use, you send them to me on the email, and I'll let you know which ones we're going to do that week. So if you want to think about it ahead of time, and I'll show you what that means. Why?
I might have to watch the show just to
Just
tell the new
once
stuff.
in a while, just to stay in touch.
And I think I look good today too. So.
No, you look really good. You should look at this show. You
Okay.
look really pretty.
Progress.
Okay, progress. And what do I want to talk about today about progress that's in a positive way? I want to talk about the fact that why don't we ever talk about the progress we have made? I don't understand this. Do you know, years and years ago, we were riding on horse and buggies. And then all the rage to complain about was the horse droppings that was everywhere in the street, okay? So we got rid of the horse and buggy, and we got cars. And then they were fine for a while. Then we turned our vengeance on them because we're forgetting about all the horse manure we don't have to pick up. We're just looking at the car. We're forgetting.
Well,
No, wait, let me finish.
okay.
Because I'm trying to make a point. And car is just an illustrated example. There's a lot of different things you can look at. And we used to manufacture. And when manufacturing first started, the Industrial Revolution first started, people were focused on that. And people, even though they have great brains, they don't focus on everything all the time. And sometimes they have to do things in steps.
Mm-hmm.
When the immigrants came over, they were not the ones that got the success. It was their kids and their grandkids. They did the work. Then the next generation. So by the time you got to the 3 generations, people are president in college, all that stuff. Okay, all those
Right.
things have happened. Okay, it takes time. And we don't have a tendency. We run around and we wring our hands about what's not right. And we never celebrate all the progress that we've made. Now, and I was talking about the industrial, and whether I use cars or whatever you build with machinery. When we were first doing that, we were wrapped up in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we had successfully achieved it, we started taking the time to go back and say, hey, we got to change this, or we're going to pollute the water. We're going to change this, or we're going to pollute the sky. You don't do everything at once. Okay? And the fact of the matter is, with the people, all these environmentalists that run around and cry and scream, it's like they never reflect on how far they've come. Okay,
That's
they may
true.
have gone as far as we can go in this generation. We don't have the technology to make the next step. You couldn't have a Ford before. You had to have horses until you had the Ford.
Right.
So in other words, we can only make so much progress in any one generation. And I think we're foolish to forget the progress we've made. Look at all the things we've gone and done good, that we've tried. We've tried to learn from our mistakes. By and large, mostly all people are basically good. Even politicians, I hate to say this, they want to be good. They are basically decent people because they come from us, and we are basically decent people. But you can only move so far. You can't satisfy every ill. That's why sometimes people have a tendency to say, well, we're changing. No, this thing is changing. We, the base, is still the same. It looks like the base is changing, but it's just, this can be implemented now, if you know what I'm saying. So my word to you about progress is, progress, we have made tremendous progress. And we don't have to, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't solve every problem right now.
It took God 7 days to create the earth.
See?
And
Okay.
Lord knows how long a day actually was.
Okay, yeah, so that's my point. My point is we've made a lot of progress, and I think we should celebrate it a little bit. I think we should give America credit for changing the tone of the world about. Do you think anybody cared about industrial waste or any of that stuff? There are still some countries that they don't care about it. Nobody builds cleaner than us. Nobody cares more about the environment than we do. We are good and decent people. And I want to see us spend a little bit more time saying, you did a good job, and this is next. You know what I mean? Not, you're horrible, you're horrible, you're horrible. Because they're throwing away 100 years of progress.
I think with regards to the progress, that maybe you're right, there's, with industrialization and all the other stuff you mentioned, that maybe we have gotten as far as we can go
Right now.
in this generation,
Would
be the baby boomer generation
Right.
that is starting to retire.
And it
But
doesn't mean we give up.
And I think they shouldn't give up, because the generation that's to follow needs to have those guys as mentors.
Right, and think of the things that they could think of if they were allowed to. Think of the ideas they can come up with if they're allowed to. So we don't want. See, I have a song called "Shadow of Tomorrow," and the point that
Okay.
it makes is this: everything that we do now is built in the shadow of efforts that other people have done, and everything the future does is built on our shadow and what we've accomplished. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't want to run around America and say America is horrible, horrible, this and that. We had slavery. We had slavery. The world had slavery, not just America. We go nuts on this. We talk about America and having slaves. Black slaves were sold to white people by black people. That's a fact of life. It don't happen now. Although there are still some places in the world where there are slaves, but they're not in America.
I think that this generation, not my generation, but the one that followed us, is a very selfish generation.
Well, but they're
Very
still young, right?
selfish. I don't know, maybe.
They haven't had the trials, but they have not. You have to remember, we had the benefit. Not
Well,
me.
here's how I think of it.
Okay.
My parents were at the very end of the baby boomer age.
Uh-huh.
Born then. They were born in 1955, 56, and that was
Right.
kind of like the
The
end
end.
of the cusp.
Right.
And so I think that the parents or that the next generation, whatever was after the baby boomers, which
Right.
wasn't us, but
Right.
whatever that generation
Right.
fostered selfishness in this. Does that make sense? Because
Well-
whoever was after the baby boomers,
Right.
their children are the people who are after me.
Right.
Does that
Well,
make sense?
Yeah.
Like
and unfortunately,
and there's this selfishness that's
Well,
about that.
you know what I
it's
think?
very weird.
and it's probably very true, but let me just say this, because, I mean, I realize I could be a grandfather now, but the fact of the matter is, that a lot of the kids that you're referring to now were parents of people that grew up in the 60s and 70s in the drug culture and the changing. Life was really. We had presidents, people killed. I mean, it was a very, very
well, yeah,
no. But the
I
point that I'm
know.
trying to make, it was a very stressful time, and so I think these parents tried to be more flexible, more loose, more free with their kids, and it didn't. Yeah, but I don't think it didn't help them.
Help them.
No, it did, but they were responding to the world that they were in. That's the point I always try to make. You know, my mother could tell you who was going to hell and why, and I can, and you want to something, and everybody thought she was a saint.
Uh-huh.
But I could never convince her that when anybody stands before God, they're going to be forgiven, because God knows A, you did not ask to be born, okay. B, there are factors that affect your life. You're a chemical being. If all your chemicals aren't right, okay, that's one thing. what if your environment is what? There's
Your
too many
environment is a
things.
destructive environment,
There's just
and you have no choice to be in that environment.
Yes, there's too
Yeah.
many things that impact on you, and I believe when you stand before God, God's going to look in your eyes. You're just going to say, Father, if I could just get out of here with the least amount of hassle, you know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? That's frivolous,
Yeah.
but
No,
I think
understand.
I think there's what do they say? God will give you forgiveness if you ask for it. And I'm telling you, anybody that stands before God is asking. Okay, there's not going to be any holders out. Nobody's going to say, "Well, I'll take my chances."
I'm hoping that all my good deeds I've been doing,
Right.
He'll eventually forgive me for hitting that nun with my flute in the middle of Mass.
Well, it was an important thing. But who knows? She might have benefited from it too. But
No.
so anyway, that was the word of the day, and blah 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 blah. And I wanted to do that. And then every week
Progress.
we're going to have a word of the day, a word of the week, and we're going to focus in a positive way in every single thing we can, because I have found out people watch this show. Okay, and they just about took our 20 points, and everybody's coming up with these little things that we talked about. Well, I'm used to this. They're doing that my whole life. So if they're going to follow us, we're going to give them a good road to go down. Okay? Yeah. See, they think they're getting off easy, but they haven't. It's not good. They made that choice. How are we doing time-wise? Oh, haha! Thought I didn't know. 24 on the first show. I don't have to circle. Okay. Oh, and I got some neat stuff. Oh no, let me put the little that was 122 for the other thing. Let me put the little palette. What time is it now?
11:09.
11:09.
So
Up
we're
goes
in a
the
tight ship here, people.
the politics sign goes up, and you come back with your issue for the week.
So you had sent me last week or the week before, we talked about Common Core, and there was a big argument between the two of us, and I still believe I won that argument.
Okay.
because
Did you get the
yours
link I
was-
sent you?
Yeah. So you
Okay.
sent me an email about
Just something I found.
about aggregated data and all that stuff.
That's what they're afraid of, I think.
Well, here's what they don't realize. We've been collecting that data for years. We've been required to collect that data like that about seriously. I would have to look at in my job.
But it sounds
at
like
the
it's
high
being
school.
formalized into a federal data bank.
It is. It's
You're
been.
doing that already?
It's been, yeah.
Well, then it should have been stopped a long time ago.
That was what was part of No Child Left Behind.
Maybe.
That was part of No Child Left Behind.
Well, maybe
And-
this is good
And
that it's coming out, because it should have never started.
well, yes and no. Here's the use of the data.
Okay.
So we look at the data and we get these test scores, and we get them by student, and
Yes,
then we
ma'am.
also get them, the average score for your what we call our bottom 25%. So
Okay.
what's the you take the bottom lowest scoring
25s,
students,
right.
yeah. We look at all of our ethnic groups,
Okay.
all of them, like
Right.
Hispanic, Black, Asian,
Right.
Indonesian,
Right,
Indian,
right,
Native
gotcha.
American,
Right.
Haitian, like everything.
Everything.
We look at income status.
Right.
We look at
How would the kids know that?
the kids don't.
Well, how do you guys get that?
You need that to enroll in the school. It's part of school enrollment.
Okay, so then I would share with you that
So-
they are really
that's-
collecting way far too much more
Well, but let me
information
tell
than
you
they
how
need.
helpful this is. So we look at the data,
Right.
and we notice, there's a pattern here. For example, 60% of our Hispanic students
Right.
are not understanding the concept of reference and research.
Okay.
They have the lowest scores in that set of test questions.
Okay.
Why is that?
Right. That
why
has
is
nothing
it-
to do with how much their parents make.
I'm not done yet.
Okay. I
Why
wanna see
is
this
it?
one.
Why is it that 40% of our low-income students,
Mhm.
40%, not Hispanic, it doesn't matter the
Heritage,
how come
right.
40% of them are struggling with a specific math standard?
Right.
Because they all didn't pass that. So
Right.
we look at those patterns and those data, and then
Right.
we, as in teachers, refine our instruction, because we also know the ethnic breakdown of the students and the socioeconomic,
Uh-huh.
and even we could even do religious background, but that doesn't play in where we are, doesn't play as much of an impact as it might possibly in some of like if you were the
It has
Jewish
no impact on math.
yeah, it doesn't have a whole lot of impact on our
What you
communities
do,
down
right.
here. But if you go into communities where there's a primary like Jewish faith or Catholic, or
Right.
the Polish Catholic community
Right.
and the Italian Catholic community and the Jewish,
Yeah.
when you have those specific neighborhoods, religion religious faith background sometimes plays into
Uh-huh.
education.
Right.
But yeah, we've been collecting that data for years, and then we as teachers say, well, okay, 40% of the students, in the whole school didn't score well, of this background, of this category didn't score well on this standard. So now let's do a focus on, as a math teacher, my students are struggling with basic multiplication
Right.
facts, or 40% of the low-income students, and then I look and I have the majority of my classes are populated with low-income students. Well, now
Okay.
I know I need to focus.
Right.
I'm not going to focus on specific students.
No,
I'm
no,
going to focus on
the
whole
general
on the-
plan.
yeah,
Right.
and that's how that data is used, and it's been going on for years. It started with No Child Left Behind when they came back down and they said that we had to do mandatory standardized testing for reading and math.
Right.
And so that now, that data has been available
Right.
to the federal government
Right.
upon request.
Right.
I think what you were talking about in Common Core is that now it is
Being delivered to them.
a requirement, and it makes sense with Common Core because Common Core is a federal standard, and so the federal standards need to have a unified monitoring. Because you could take a state like Florida and a state like New York and a state like California, and they're going to monitor. If there's no criteria for monitoring, they're going to report what's going to make them look best on these standards.
So does the government. That's the problem.
Well,
See,
the
too many
government-
people
the
just sit
government's
back and
going
they think
to report out
yeah,
what they feel is best. That's what they're going to report out, but the data will have a unified collection.
Okay, well, I would
Does
only
that
say
make sense?
Sure it does. And listen, there's a part. Now, see, I have to tell you, I lived my whole life in show business. That's like being on camera the whole time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these
Same
little, these
as a
things.
teacher. A teacher's technically on camera the whole time.
These things don't really bother me that much. But what I don't like is, I still think that I can see a place for federal guidelines, but I'd like to see the localities. I'd like to see the states and the localities have input over what their curriculum is. Because this is what this is what I care about.
They
but they
have.
won't with Common Core. With Common
No,
Core,
they
you have to
have.
teach very specific things.
Let me tell
That's
you,
the part of it
Common
I
Core-
don't like.
Common Core, I just sat through a conference on this in the last 2 weeks too. Common Core has the standardized testing. There's 2 companies that are authorized to do standardized testing on the Common Core standards from the federal government. And there's 15 states that are participating in developing these tests for the Common Core that will be unified against these states, with these states, and then there's another set of states with the other company that are coming together to test. So, but I think that's not what you're talking about.
Now,
You're
my
talking about
concern
the
is what
standards
is
itself.
being taught.
That
I do not want what's being taught regulated by the federal
They
government.
it
Because
needs to
every
be.
time, no, you know why? Because they're political. They're just as political as anybody else.
I think that
And
this
they
is the
want.
one
Do you
time
know we
that
saw a
they got
test
it right.
that one of the questions was the reason we had 9/11 was because it was our fault. That was handed out as an answer in a test. Okay. Now
Yeah,
I think the answers. I
Was
think
that
the
the
answers.
correct answer? No.
Yes. The correct answer was because America does things that some countries don't like. Listen, when
Show
they
me
come
that
to
to
us
us.
for okay, so but that's what I'm worried about. See,
Yes,
I care very
You're
much
looking at it from a very.
from a federalist point of view. I
Yeah,
don't want.
and
I don't
I look
embrace
at
the
it
government.
as you have, and you're not in education, and that's the other thing is you're not.
No, I'm not.
And so what you're seeing is.
I'm seeing Washington D.C. come out and tell us this, that, and the other thing.
This is such a conservative view, and it's so frustrating because.
Yeah, but it's true.
Right, but what you're so focused on these things that in the education world, from the teacher's perspective, are so
Right.
minute. They're so inconsequential because seriously they are, because looking at it from the education perspective, this is the first time that the United States is going to have unified standards for reading and for math that are comparative to the unified standards that they have in countries in Europe and Asian countries.
Yeah, but
and
we
let me
owe-
tell- I'm not
no,
done
wait.
yet. I'm not done yet.
We always
Let
led.
me tell you. We haven't led in a decade.
That's right.
And
We
you
haven't.
know why we haven't?
I got a
It's
good idea, but
because-
you tell me.
Because, first of all, No Child Left Behind did that for us. The focus became
We
off
were
of...
ahead before that.
Let me tell you. No Child Left Behind screwed us over, screwed the education field over, because it was started to require standardized testing and students can't graduate without passing the test. And they put so much emphasis on these stupid tests that teachers stopped teaching curriculum, they started teaching test questions. So what the hell are the students learning?
So you know what that tells me? That tells me that it was the implementation, not what it wanted to do.
I'm not done yet. And it left the standards to be assessed up to the states. So the state of Florida has a different mandatory standards to test than the state of New York. And I can tell you, New York is a hell of a lot harder than Florida's. And California is between Florida and New York. And then people wonder why our kids are getting stupid. Because there's no common ground of what the teachers are supposed to teach, yet we're supposed to test them on this stuff. Finally, in math and reading, which is what we are so at the bottom of the world in those
Yeah, we didn't used to be.
in those subjects. No, we didn't. And now we are.
Yeah, well, I believe
and-
it was their meddling that caused it.
No, it wasn't.
I believe it is.
It was not. It was. I should take that back. It was the meddling of No Child Left Behind that
That was
caused it.
before that.
We could have gone up, and they made us go worse. Anyway.
So much changed
so
in the 60s.
We are so at the bottom in all of those countries: France, Spain, Norway, China, Japan, Korea, Argentina, New Zealand, Australia, Saudi Arabia has better math and reading scores than the United States. Okay? And those countries have unified standards, a unified government-funded education system, and it works. And how come we can't get our crap together?
They also don't have unions.
So?
No, it's not so. The unions have been the bane of everything you've tried to do in education, because all of their focus is on their money and the people at the top getting
The
what
unions?
they... No, okay, no,
The
please,
unions
I
don't
let
like
you
No
finish.
Child Left Behind either.
That's totally irrelevant to me.
So.
They don't like the country. All they want to do is make money from us. Okay?
Well, when you're president, we'll have them go through the
Well,
labor
they're going to have to go through the labor because they're going to have to be
Uh-huh.
reviewed. Nobody's going to be making contracts like that when it's a politician on one side and a union on the other. That's totally unacceptable. Where are we? We're paying the bill. Neither one of these guys care about us. I'm telling you, all those countries that you talked about are I shouldn't say they're dictators, but they don't have unions. Unions do not have the power that these ones have here. So, and I just have to look at that. And I look at what's happened here. Just like they killed the car industry because they demanded so much, and these yellow spineless turkeys gave it up. I blame them, and I don't know if it's liberal or conservative or white or black or up or down, and I don't care about any of those things. Where they are just Americans. All I know is that the reason that Detroit is empty now is because of the unions and the union pensions. They kept demanding and demanding and demanding, and they demanded themselves out of business. And great, doesn't this relate back to our progress thing? It was a place where people tried to do more than they could do in their time, right? If the unions had, because let's face it, everybody agrees that there was a time in America where the unions was a great help to the fight to the working man. Okay, we built all this stuff, and he got kind of lost. And then we got the unions to come in and help them. And what happened? Like the EPA, they're going and going and going and going. They're trying to accomplish more than they have a right to accomplish in their lifetime. If they're full-time people, they think they have to work. We got to do this. You got a raise last year. You got to get a raise this year. There's no common sense. Nobody is starting to realize that you can do this much and then live.
I will, and then this note because we're close to the end.
we good?
Common
Oh
Core.
gosh, we're very close.
Common Core is not a bad thing. I know that the
Next week-
Federalist in you, but it's not a bad thing.
Okay.
Buy America, do something good every day, and volunteer at your local animal shelter.
Okay, as good as we are, they will be. Oh, here's Legless. Oh. I never even had a chance.
Okay, Joe, you didn't think we'd just give you one song. No point getting an old one unless we can give you one that you help inspire. Here's a song, a brand new one called When I Was Young. I was alone didn't know why. I was out on my own with no love inside, wandering free out on my own. Never ever really leaving home. In those days when I was young, I only just begun to believe love could fly and never die, and never be undone. Oh, when I was young. Looking around for a way to reach out and touch the people that I need. But baby, which road to go by? When the only thing you're sure of is you gotta try. In those days when I was young, we never looked for fun. We were just going out playing our hearts away, trying to bring some sun. Oh, when I was young. You're on your own, wondering why, afraid that love's about to pass you by. Remember, there are roads to choose, and only by not trying do you lose. So remember to be young, to always look for sun. Try to see that love can